Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Expat Edge. In this video, we're going to find out how important it is to know Spanish in Colombia and Mexico.
Welcome to the Expat Edge with Marcus and Matt, where we answer your questions about becoming an expat to help you thrive abroad.
With me, we have Joe Bautista from bautistaplanningandanalytics.com. I grew up with Joe and I went to Russia for some reason. He went down south to South America. One thing about Russia is that if you don't know the language, it's quite difficult to get around. Not like German, Western Europe or something where English can be spoken. How much Spanish do you have to know to feel comfortable and things like that? Can you give us some more details?
Well, it really depends on where you are in those two countries. Like if you're in a more of a touristy place, like in Poblado and Medellin, there's a lot of tourists there from America. So you could find the ability to speak English, but you're kind of then just stuck in a bubble. But a big reason why I went to Latin America, Colombia, Mexico, Panama, Costa Rica was the ability to learn Spanish. And I've been doing this for the last 3 years. And I've noticed that as my Spanish improves, my life in Latin America improves, because then you get to interact with the locals and you can make jokes with them. You can learn valuable information. Like I made a lot of friends in Mexico and Colombia, and we would go out and party, and it's because I could speak Spanish. If I didn't speak Spanish, that would be a bigger barrier, because why do you want to hang around someone that you can't really communicate with? And it just makes things better. Like when I go to cafes and I would speak in Spanish, and then we could communicate, to chat a little bit. And it also makes I would feel people of Colombia and Mexico and Latin America just like, oh, these people are here to be helpful. They're not here to take, I guess, is the mentality.
Okay. So, your dad is from Mexico. Did you grow up speaking Spanish?
No. One of the things where my dad is from is in Oaxaca, is from a small town. They don't speak Spanish. They speak an indigenous dialect called Zapoteco. I was just there last month for a wedding, and they speak Zapoteco in the town. So it's not Spanish. And I'm like, oh, that's probably a big reason why I didn't learn Spanish, because my dad is speaking Zapoteco. He knows Spanish, but he speaks Zapoteco.
Right.
And it's totally different.
Interesting. Okay, so they all know Spanish, but is it like they prefer to speak Zapoteco? So you didn't even go down that road, but because they already know Spanish, right?
Well, yeah. So they know Spanish, like I could communicate with them, but like if they're like in a family setting down there in Oaxaca, they're speaking Zapoteco because that's their native language. So
okay, interesting. So you talked about social life, how important it is to get to know the locals and find valuable information by mingling with them and befriending them. How important is learning Spanish with immigration and things like getting places to rent and things like that? Do you go through a realtor or things like that? Or is it pretty much you're based everything on Spanish, all your interaction for getting things done?
It's so much easier if you could speak the language. Though usually the way I find a place is I go on Facebook groups. So I, like, for example, you could type in Mexico City expats apartments, and usually there's someone there that's a broker looking to rent out a place. And sometimes they speak English, but if you want the best deals and not pay gringo prices, then speak Spanish. So you definitely could help you out in that area. And just like with immigration, if you could speak Spanish, or if you're interacting with the police, if you could speak Spanish, it just makes everything easier.
Do the locals, police, any officials in the immigration offices, do they warm up to you and treat you differently if you speak Spanish? I mean, obviously there is an element of that. If you can't speak and if you can't communicate, how can they treat you, bad or worse or whatever? But is it noticeable that they kind of warm up to you, or what is it like?
Yeah, I remember being in Mexico one time. I was walking on the street. A cop on a motorcycle just turned the corner and just went straight to me and pulled over and just started patting me down. And at first he thought I was Mexican. I could pass by. And then I just told him I was American, and I was speaking to him in Spanish and said, hey, I'm learning Spanish. And like I would say things like in Mexican slang to him, and he just started like opening up and got all chummy with me. And he wanted to talk for like keep talking to me. And I was like, hey, buddy, I got to go. And he's like, yeah, go. And so I feel like knowing Spanish in that situation was helpful. You could also play dumb. Like, I could be like speaking Spanish, or if I don't want to talk to somebody, like, I don't speak Spanish. Because like my accent is noticeable. So.
Okay, so you can use it to your advantage and just play it by ear based on the situation. Is there any, like you said, the touristy areas, is there maybe like in Germany, for example, they speak English pretty well in even some official places. Are there places where you could get by in, or situations where you could get by in English, or not really?
I guess you would just use Google Translate on your phone. Just make sure you have that downloaded just so you can write things and translate it if you're not able to communicate verbally.
Right. There's no hope that you'd go to immigration and one of the workers speak English.
They might. It just depends on the place. So like in a more touristy place, yes, you can find someone that speaks English.
Okay, because like in Russia, no chance, pretty much. In Germany, it's hit or miss. Does it differ from Colombia and Mexico? Or it's about the same?
Hit or miss, depending. Like I would say like places like Cartagena and Medellin and Bogota and Colombia, it would be hit or miss with the person that you're interacting with, just because there's a lot of tourists that go by. Same thing in Mexico. Like if you don't go to like Cancun or something like that, Acapulco, and you go to some place like Querétaro in Mexico, which is a town that doesn't have many American expats, then it's probably more miss than hit.
I see. Okay. Thanks for sharing your experience. I had no idea, what that was like, whether you need to know Spanish at a higher level or you could get by in English. And I hope that was helpful for anybody looking to go to Colombia or Mexico. If you had any similar experience, let us know in the comments below. Thank you so much, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus.
This was the Expat Edge with Matt and Marcus. We hope you enjoyed the video. Visit theexpatedge.com for even more content that will help you thrive abroad. You can submit your ideas for video topics and sign up for free at theexpatedge.com. See you there.